Hello students, welcome to Smart Solution. I am Nikhil and today we'll start with standard 8 geography, chapter number 3, that is agriculture. Okay, so Gurpreet, Madho and Tina were walking through the village where they saw a farmer tilling land. The farmer told them that he was growing wheat and had just added manure to the soil to make it more fertile. He told the children that the wheat would fetch a good price in the mandi, from where it would be taken to a factory to make bread and biscuits from flour. So three friends, Gurpreet, Madhu and Tina, so they were walking through a village and they saw a farmer who was preparing his land for agricultural purpose. So he was preparing sand so that he can do sowing. So he was planning to sow wheat, to grow wheat, and he was expecting that when he will grow wheat, when he will harvest the wheat, and when he will sell it in the market, he will get good money as a return. So also this farmer told that he has just added manure to the soil because wheat requires fertilizers and manure is a good fertilizer. Okay, so manure we get it from domestic animals, basically you can say, like cow dung, or even from hens. So this type of manure he has added to his land so to increase its fertility, and he will be now growing wheat which he can sell it in the mandi. So once he sells the wheat in mandi, so someone from factory or any of the factory may buy it, and they may further use this wheat in their factories for making breads and biscuits. So apart from this, there are a lot many other applications. So it may also be used in making all the food items that are basically composed of this wheat. Okay, so this transformation from plant to a finished product involves three type of economic activities. These are primary, secondary and tertiary activity. So if you see all these activities, starting from agricultural activity, then processing it in the factory, and then after processing the prepared biscuits and breads, so they are transported to the customers. So all these activities starting from agricultural up to the end consumer, so they constitute three major activities, that is primary, secondary and tertiary activity. So we are going to see in details what these primary, secondary and tertiary activities are. So primary activities involve all those connected with extraction and production of natural resources. So if you see the definition of primary activity, it says that all those connected activities with extraction and production of natural resources. Okay, so agriculture, fishing and gathering are examples of this activity. So if you see what it means, it extraction in the sense or production in the sense, it means that whatever comes from agriculture and related activities, all this is counted under primary activity. So in agriculture, what we do, we get products from the agricultural field. Also we do fishing, and we also do some domestic cattling. So we get milk from domestic animals like cow, goat or buffalo. We even get chicken or meat from hens, eggs from them. So these are also the part of agricultural activity. So all these things that we extract or we derive from natural resources, they are known as primary activity. Apart from this, if you look at the example of mining, so wherein we get different ores from the earth crust, so these activities also fall primary under the primary activity. Okay, so in addition to agricultural, fishing and forestry, mining also is an primary activity. So clear? So just recap, see the activities which involves extraction and production of goods from natural resources, these are known as primary activities. Okay, so now after collecting or after getting these primary goods, that is from primary activities, so what is the second step? So now these goods will be taken to some other factories where it would be further processed to make some product from this. Say for example, if we are extracting minerals from earth's crust, then Further they would be refined to produce say for example iron ore, aluminium, gold, silver, copper, etc. So all these activities that are done on primary activities to give it a shape or to manufacture some product out of that, these activities are known as secondary activities. Okay, so secondary activities are concerned with processing of these primary activities, you can say. So manufacturing of steel, baking of breads and weaving of clothes are examples of these activities. So all the activities that we do on the natural resources that are obtained in primary activity, these are known as secondary activities. So the examples are manufacturing of steel. So we get iron ore which is done using mining in primary activity, and on this product of primary activity, that is iron ore, we process the ore and we can manufacture steel. So all the manufacturing processes that are done on primary activity, they fall under the category of secondary activities. Okay, so now primary activity is done, secondary activity is done. Okay, so now what after once we are producing or we have produced the product? Say for example, if we are a steel making company, or if we are a bread or butter making bakery, so we need further to sell this to the customers. Okay, so for this there are different activities involved. Say for example, it could be transportation, it could be the payments, it could be the advertisement required for this. So all these activities which are related to the primary or secondary sectors or activities, these are known as tertiary activities. So in general you can say that tertiary activities are those activities which supports primary activities as well as secondary activities. Okay, so let us see at some examples. So these are transport, trade, banking, insurance and advertising. So if you see transportation, so in primary activity, if you see say for example mining or agriculture, there is transportation of raw material or basic materials, say for example grains which are required for sowing in case of farming, and also transportation of harvested product from farmer to the mandi. So this transportation activity is required in primary activity. So let us see if transportation activity is also required in secondary activity. So if you see iron ore which was produced in mining as a primary activity is now transported to a company or industry where it would be further processed to manufacture steel. So transportation activity is also involved in secondary activity to bring in raw material, but once the steel is produced, it has to be distributed to the customers. So again we need some transportation facility to do so. So we can also say that yes, transportation activity is also involved in secondary activities to a lot extent. So all these activities which are required as a support basically to secondary or primary activities, they are known as tertiary activities. Okay, so hope these primary, secondary and tertiary activities is clear to you. So now let us move forward. So before moving forward, let us understand what agriculture means. Okay, so if you see, agriculture is a word which is derived from Latin word ager or agri, which means soil, and culture means cultivation. So whatever is cultivated from soil, that is known as agriculture. Okay, so agriculture is a primary activity. It includes growing crop, fruits, vegetables, flowers, and rearing of livestock. So the activities that are involved in agriculture, they are basically growing crops, growing fruits, growing vegetables, growing flowers of different colors and rearing of livestock. So it means you can have buffaloes, ox, hens and so on. So in the world 50% of people are engaged in agricultural activity. So if you see in the world almost 50%, so a lot of people or a lot of human labor is engaged in this agricultural activity. Two-thirds of India's population is still dependent on agriculture, and if you see in context to India, so almost two-thirds of Indian population is engaged in agriculture. So that is why India is also known as the land of farmers, because there are lot of people who are engaged in this farming activity. So favorable topography of soil and climate are vital for agricultural activities. So there are two major inputs required for this agricultural activity. First is the type of soil. So if there is good soil, you can prefer agriculture, and also climate. So there should be proper rainfall patterns, and availability of water. So these are the two major things required for agricultural activity. The land on which the crop are grown is known as arable land. So the land on which we can grow crop, these are known as arable lands. So in the map you can see that agricultural activity is concentrated in those regions of the world where suitable factors for the growing of crop exist. So we are given here a map of world and marked on this with some green color is the arable land. So if you see over here, so all the regions where there are good climatic conditions which are favorable for growth of crop, so their agricultural activities can be done, and the land on which this agricultural activity is done, that is known as arable land. So if you look at the globe, we see very less area which is arable, right? So see of this African this is America, not Africa, so American context. So you can see that uh, very less land is under arable land, or very less land is under agricultural activity. If you see with respect to India, so you see that very large amount of land is agriculturable, right, or arable land which is under cultivation. So you basically, because of availability of good land and availability of water during monsoons, so we basically in India are involved in agricultural activities, and that is why almost two-thirds of the human population in India is based on this agricultural activity. So let us try to understand few of the activities. So what they mean? So agriculture. So the science and art of cultivation on soil, raising crop and rearing livestock, it is called as farming. So what does this agriculture mean? It is a science and art. So science, because you need knowledge of various patterns of climate, say summer, winter, monsoon. Also you need to understand the fertility of soil, the type of crop you can grow, various physics and chemistries, or you can say behind these technology, which technology to use or how knowledge is to be properly used. So so that is why it is a science, and it is also art, because there are various skills required for farming. You need to have proper level of land, proper watering system done. So basically you can say that agriculture is art and science of cultivation, and that is done on soil. It also involves raising crops and rearing livestocks like as we discussed, hens, camels, buffaloes, cows, goats, and so on. So all these activities, that is known as farming. So next is sericulture. So commercial rearing of silkworm, it may supplement the income of the farmer. So rearing of silkworm is known as sericulture. So basically why this activity is done? This is done in order to produce silk, and the farmer who is involved in silkworm, he will be having good income, because it is a good income producing source. So basically people are involved in sericulture. So what is sericulture? Sericulture is rearing of silkworm. Pisciculture. So pisciculture is basically breeding of fish in specially constructed tanks and ponds. So the person who is involved in breeding of fish in artificially constructed tank or pond is known as pisciculture. Viticulture. So cultivation of grapes is known as viticulture. So do you know that nowadays alcohol or wines are made up of grapes apart from juice or consumption purpose? So that is why grapes are also gaining importance, and viticulture is also now a booming field. So again, what is viticulture? So viticulture is cultivation of grapes. And what is horticulture? So horticulture is growing of vegetables, flowers, and fruits for commercial use. So if you have you would have seen that many people, they are involved in producing different vegetables, different flowers of different colors or different breeds, and even fruits under a very controlled atmosphere in, you can say, green shades. So basically all these activities, they are known as horticulture activities, right? So clear. Agriculture related to farming and livestock, sericulture related to silkworm, pisciculture related to breeding of fish, viticulture, grapes cultivation, and horticulture, growing of vegetable, flowers, and fruits for commercial purpose. Good. So now let us try to understand what is farming system. So before moving forward, let us just discuss what are all the activities that are involved in farming. So if you see, very first activity is preparing land. So what does it mean? It means land, it is either plugged, then some fertilizers are mixed in the plugged land. Sometimes it is left open to sky to get heated up. So after the land is prepared, then sowing is done. Once sowing is done, then there has to be intermittent irrigation done for this farm. But as the crop grows, it is possible that some weeds will also grow, so there has to be removal of these weeds. So removal of weeds can be done physically, manually, or using some chemicals which will kill the weed. Apart from this, as per the requirement of the crop, different fertilizers are added or sprayed on this crop at different times. So this in giving fertilizers to crop is also an important activity. So once the crop is completely grown, so now the crop is cut down, that is known as harvesting. So harvesting is the process of cutting the total food or the crop that is now completely grown. So once the harvesting is done, it is further processed and then storage can be done as per the available space or facility. So now whatever is left out in the land, that either can be removed or it can be totally burnt out, right? But burning is not a good option. We should basically remove it and further see that this is now decomposed to form a manure. So these are basically the activities that are involved in agriculture. Okay, we are going to see in details how these agricultural activities are classified or how this is basically done. So agriculture or farming can be looked at as a system. The important inputs are seeds, fertilizers, machinery, and labor. So four major inputs are seeds, which we require for sowing; fertilizers, which are required for providing nutrition to these plants when they are growing; machinery, they are required for doing various activities that are involved in farming; and labor, to carry out various activities. So some of the operations. So if you see in this picture, you see a farmer who is spraying some chemicals on these seeds. Here is a chemical shown. Here are some seeds which initially he has sown. So these are the machineries he may use for farming activities. So presently he is doing some process on this field, and at a later date he will be producing crops as an output. Yeah. So we also have some physical and human farm inputs in this. So you see some human inputs, they involve basically labor, providing labor for this agricultural facility, use of some machineries, you can say, or using manual processes only. So basically these are known as human inputs. So it includes irrigation, storage facilities, labor, machineries, and even chemicals. And there are some physical inputs required for this agricultural activity. They are sunshine, rainfall, soil pattern, and temperature. But if you see all the physical inputs, they are naturally available, and it is very difficult to control these physical inputs. Yeah. So because of this, we see that in India during different season, different type of crop is grown. Okay, and only we what we can control is human input. So according to season, every farmer he controls his human input, and thus he can control the outcome or the product from the field. So now type of farming. So farming is practiced in various ways across the world depending upon the geographical conditions, demand of produce, labor, and level of technology. Farming can be classified into two main types, that is subsistence farming and commercial farming. So if you see all over the world, farming is primarily done, and different type of crops are grown in different geographies. Why? Because if you see at the global climate, so the climate basically changes from region to region because of a location on the globe, and secondary due to the altitudes, different altitudes. Okay, so different zones or different regions will have different ways or different climates, and therefore there would be production of different crops primarily. Secondly, the availability of labor or the demand of the crop, that will also decide which type of crop will be taken. Availability of labor will decide whether a particular crop which is highly labor intensive will be taken, or the crop that requires very low labor will be taken. Third important factor is technology. So if say for example an advanced country can use higher technologies like satellite imaging, spraying through spraying chemicals through, you can say, air modes like aeroplanes or helicopters, so that can also be done. So in case of underdeveloping countries like India, we don't see much of the technology. So basically this availability of technology will also decide what type of crop you are taking. So basically, considering all these factors, whatever we saw like produce, labor, geographical conditions, and level of technology, we can divide this farming into two major categories, that is subsistence farming and commercial farming. So now let us try to understand what is subsistence farming. So in subsistence farming, this is a practice, or this is practiced to meet the needs of farmers family. So basically a small farmer who is involved in farming to produce crop for his own consumption, that is known as subsistence farming. Okay, and traditionally a low level of technology and household labors are used to produce on small output. Since the farmer is poor, he cannot afford going for large technology. Second thing, he will involve his household labors only in this output, because his land is also of small size, and he will also get output of very small quantity, which shall be only sufficient for his survival throughout the year. So this type of farming, basically it is known as subsistence farming, which is done by farmer for producing crop for his own consumption. So further we can divide subsistence farming into two major groups, that is intensive subsistence and primitive subsistence farming. So let us try to understand what is intensive subsistence agriculture. So the farmer cultivates a small plot of land using simple tools and more labor. So a person who is involved in farming activity, who has got a very small plot of land and he uses simple tools and technology or labor, the conventional way, you can say. So this is known as intensive subsistence agriculture. So climate with large number of days with sunshine and fertile soil permits growing of more than one crop annually on the same plot. So basically what is done, this farmer will grow different crops in different seasons. So he will be growing more than one crop in a year. So rice is main crop. One crop includes wheat, maize, pulses, and oilseeds. So if you see a lot of farmers in India, what they do, they take rice as a major crop during a particular season, and during other season, they may take some other crops like wheat, maize, pulses, or any oilseed. Okay, so this type of agriculture where more than one crop is taken in a year, this is known as intensive subsistence agriculture. So intensive subsistence agriculture is prevalent in the thickly populated areas of monsoon region of southeast and east Asia. So if you see, this type of farming is basically done where the area is thickly populated. Why? Because since the demand is increasing and area under agriculture is not increasing, population is increasing but area under the agriculture is not increasing, so demand is increasing. Okay, and in order to meet the requirements of this demand, intensive agriculture needs to be done, and that is basically practiced in a region when there is a lot of monsoon in south, southeast, and east Asia. So now primitive subsistence agriculture. So if we see at primitive subsistence agriculture, it is further divided into shifting cultivation and nomadic herding. So shifting cultivation now. So what is shifting cultivation? So if you see, Thickly forested areas, like any thickly forested area which was initially not under agricultural practice, now some part of this forest will be cut down, so that is it will be cleaned away, and the area now which is vacated will now be used for agricultural purpose. So what will happen, this area or the plants that were now cut down will be burned. Whatever ash is remaining of these plants or felling or burning of these plants, that will be mixed with the land or soil, and and after that agriculture activity will be done on that farm or that field. So this will be done for few years, couple of years, till the soil has got good fertility. But as we know that since we are going with continuous farming activities, taking different crops, the fertility of soil will reduce, the soil will lose its fertility. So now what will happen, instead of increasing the fertility of this soil, it may happen that people will shift from this particular land to next land. What they will do, they will shift from one place to another. Again, they may cut down the forest, they may again burn the trees or plants that they have cut and convert it into ash, and again they will mix this ash with the new soil in the new region, and again they will do agricultural activity in this field for some years, after which again the soil will lose its fertility and again they have to move to the next place. So this type of farming, in which farmer moves from one place to another place, and for agriculture purpose, this is known as shifting cultivation. So just will read it aloud. So shifting cultivation is practiced in the thickly forested areas of Amazon basin. So where it is done, it is done in Amazon basin, tropical Africa, part of Southeast Asia and Northeast India. So these are the areas of heavy rainfall and quick regeneration of vegetation. So basically the areas should be very highly rainfall and should be quickly regeneration, right? So if there is no rainfall, then the major drawback or the major challenge would be the availability of water, right? So there should be heavily rainfall. A plot of land is cleaned by felling the trees and burning them. The ashes are then mixed with the soil and cropping like maize, yam, potatoes and cassava are grown. So these are the major crops that are grown under this shifting cultivation. So after the soil loses its fertility, the land is abandoned and the cultivator moves to the next plot. So when the land loses its fertility, the producer, he'll move to the next plot. Shifting cultivation is also known as slash and burn agriculture. Shifting cultivation is also known as slash and burn agriculture. So in exam it may happen that instead of shifting cultivation they may ask what is slash and burn agriculture. So you should be in the position to know that slash and burn agriculture is nothing but shifting cultivation. Okay, so now nomadic herding. So this is the second type of primitive subsistence agriculture. So basically what is done is, you may have seen that there are people who with their herds are moving from one place to another place in the search of food for their cattle. So in India, if you see, there are goat rearing people who moves from one part to another part. There are also people who rear cows. There are also people who rears camels. So basically, if you see, camels are reared mostly in Rajasthan, cows are mostly reared in Gujarat, and goats, you can say, they are mostly reared in Maharashtra. So what these people do, the people move from one place to another place in search of food for their cattle, because they have large number of cattle and hence they required large amount of food, right? So say for example, if they stay in a particular area and they do not move, so is it possible to collect so much of fodder for their cattle? No, right? So that is why they move from one region to another region. So nomadic herding is practiced in the semi-arid and arid region of Sahara, Central Asia and some part of India like Rajasthan and Jammu and Kashmir. So basically this is done in areas like Rajasthan and Jammu and Kashmir in India. So in this type of farming, herdsmen moves from one place to place, from one place to another, you can say, with their animals for fodder and water. So why they move? Because they need fodder and water for their cattle along defined routes. So they, if you see, they have defined routes, like for every year they will be moving from one region to another region through a particular route. Why particular route? Because they know that if they move through this particular route, there is a probability that their cattle will get sufficient food and water. This type of movement arises in response to climatic constraints and terrain. And why this condition of moving from one place to another is arising? Because there is limited rainfall, because of limited rainfall, or there is limited water, and because of this limited water, it may happen that there is no proper vegetation for these animals, or there is no sufficient vegetation. So basically they move in search of vegetation for these animals. So sheep, camel, yak and goats are most commonly reared. They provide, so basically the animals that are reared are sheep, camel, yak and goat. So why they are reared? Because we get lot of products from them. So these includes milk, meat, wool, hides and other products. So all these products we get from these animals, and the one who owes these herds, basically they will sell these products and get money in exchange of these products. Okay, so now we have to move to the next part, that is next type of classification measure, that is commercial farming. So if I again go back to the type of farming, so we have said that the the farming activities or the farming basically can be divided into two major groups, that is subsistence farming and commercial farming. Then we started with subsistence farming and saw that in subsistence farming there are two major classification. First is intensive farming, that is intensive subsistence agriculture, and primitive subsistence agriculture. Okay, so and in primitive subsistence agriculture, we saw shifting cultivation and nomadic herding. So now let us start at commercial farming. So what is commercial farming? So basically, if you see commercial farming, by the name only we will come to know that the farming which is done for commercial purpose, or which is done on commercial purpose for gaining profits. So that is known as commercial farming. So in commercial farming, crops are grown and animals are reared for sale in market. So as discussed, so this type of farming is done so that we can sell them in the market and get good returns. The area cultivated and the amount of capital used is large. For this commercial farming, we require a very huge area and also large amount of capital. Most of the work is done by machines, and in this type of farming high technology is used. Various machines are used for different activities. Commercial farming includes commercial grain farming, mixed farming and plantation agriculture. So different types of farming is done. Say for example, someone may do grain farming, someone may do mixed farming, and some may involved in plantation agriculture. So in commercial grain farming, crops are grown for commercial purpose. Wheat and maize are major commercially grown grains. So if you see in commercial grain farming, two major crops are taken. First is wheat and second is maize. Okay. So major areas where commercial grain farming is practiced are temperate grasslands of North America. So the major areas where this commercial grain farming is done, they includes temperate grasslands of North America, Europe and Asia. So these areas are sparsely populated. So see, as we saw that for commercial farming we require huge amount of area. So obviously, since there is a lot of area under agriculture, the population would be rare, right? So these are sparsely populated areas with large farmers spreading over hundreds of hectares. And the farm, if you see, it is a continuous farm of hundreds of hectares. Several winter restricts the growing season, and also a single crop can be grown. So what happens in most of the regions, it is not possible to grow in winters because of severe winters. So only one crop can be taken in a year, right? So this was about like the commercial farming, in which we saw grain commercial farming. Now let us look at what is a mixed farming. So in mixed farming, the land is used for growing food and food crops and rearing livestock. So in mixed farming, what is done? We can grow food and fodder crop for rearing animals. So two things are done. The primary would be like growing a food crop, and in that only we will grow fodder crop, which will be used for rearing livestock. So it is practiced in Europe, Eastern USA, Argentina, Southeast Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. So these are the regions where mixed farming is practiced. So plantation are a type of commercial farming where single crop of tea, coffee, sugarcane, cashew, rubber, banana or cotton are grown. So basically, what does this plantation mean? So it is a type of commercial farming where we grow single crop like tea, coffee, sugarcane, cashew nut, rubber, banana, or even cotton. So large amount of labor and capital is required for this plantation farming. They produce may be processed on the farm itself or in the nearby factory. So what will happen? Whatever the product we get from this plantation, either they can be processed in the land itself or they would be sold to the industry so that further process can be done in the factory. The development of transportation network is important, and it will decide whether this type of farming can be done in a particular area or no, because if there is a delay in transportation, it may happen that the crop will no more be suitable due to the delayed in transportation, and it may be wasted. So major plantations are found in the tropical regions of the world. So this includes rubber produced in Malaysia, coffee in Brazil, tea in India and Sri Lanka. So these are some of the examples, right? So now we have to see major crops. What are the major crops that are grown? So just let me check out. So what we can do, we can discuss these major crops in the upcoming chapter. So hope you have understood all the concepts in today's lecture. If you have any doubts, you can write down to us in the comments and we'll be happy to reply to your comments. Please go through the text, and if you have not subscribed our channel yet, please do subscribe. Please hit the subscription button. Please hit the like icon, um, and do visit our channel regularly for the upcoming videos. Thank you.